Good morning, I'm Sara de Masi and I am from University of Florence. And today I'm going to present this paper called Gender Diversity on Corporate Boards When Raising the Voice is Not Enough. It's a paper that I developed with two co-authors, Professor Andrea Paci from University of Florence and Professor Agnieszka Słomka-Gołębiowska from Warsaw School of Economics in Poland. Well, the reasoning of developing this paper is based on the idea that women on boards bring values, bring gender diversity within the board, bring different resources, qualities, different experience, all these things that may improve or that may the board may find particularly beneficial for their decisions and their activity. So we know that in the literature, a lot of papers have tried to describe, to understand the contribution of women on boards and how boards were able or were not able to exploit such benefits. In this paper, we try to differentiate the contribution of women on board, and specifically we distinguish two main situations that women on board as a minority can face. Actually, when a minority is able to influence the board, we can have two different situations. The first situation is when a minority voice their opinion. So in other words, when a minority is so brave enough to speak up and to disclose their opinion, to bring on the table their diversity in terms of value, experience, whatever, this minority, the first situation is where this minority just voice their opinion, the speak up behavior. But there is a second situation that it's different from such situation, from the first situation. A second situation is when is it possible that the minority, in this case the women, would voice their opinion, would bring on the table their different perspectives, but the other board member would be not able to listen their opinion. So there is a second situation where it's possible that the board may influence by women contribution. So it's when women have the voice heard. So in other words, there are two different situations where women can contribute to the board outcome. The first situation is when just women speak up, the speak up situation, they voice their opinion. The second situation is when is something a little bit more. So it's not just voicing their opinion, but also the other board members listen such opinion. So we try to test these two different situations, looking at some board processes. The idea is that for some board processes, just voice their opinion would be enough to improve or to change the board processes. But for other board processes, maybe just voice their opinion is not enough, but you need the other board member would listen such opinion. So in other words, we focus, our main research question is the following: how does women's voice influence the effort norms and the conflict, the cognitive conflicts? So we build on the seminal work of Milliken, Forbes and Milliken in 1999. So we define the effort norms as the individual efforts that each board members put in such activity. And we express such effort norm as the time that the board members devote to the board activity and the degree of attentiveness and the participation of board directors. The second board processes is the cognitive conflicts. The cognitive conflicts refers to the situation where the presence of multiple viewpoints are necessary to create task content related disagreement. So in other words, to create discussion that are constructive discussion that lead to, in principle, that may lead to better board decision. So we built basically our theoretical framework from the seminal work of counter theory that in 1977 she opened this stream of research when she talked about the tokenism. So when she talked about the specific behavioral challenges that minority face when they are just one woman on board. So when they are seen as just as token, just as a symbol. So in this situation, when the numerical representation of women is very low, women is viewed as just a symbol, as a token. So in most of the case, she doesn't speak up, or if she speak up, her voice is not heard. But starting from that point, in a lot of empirical paper has been published and developed on such theoretical framework, and we have several empirical papers. These are the most important, that try to identify the behavioral challenges and also the consequences of being a minority in the board. But all these papers, considering all these papers didn't distinguish between such situation, between voice their opinion and having their opinion heard. But most of the time, these two situations are considered all together. We believe that actually this situation shouldn't be considered together, because there are some situation where, as I said before, where just voicing their opinion is not enough to change the board behavior. This is a quite recent paper, empirical paper, that shows that above the specific threshold, women facilitate better monitoring, change the board behavior, they contribute to divergent thinking, and so on and so forth. So based on this previous literature, we focus on the relationship between the threshold of women, different thresholds of women that can distinguish these two different situations, voice the opinion and having the opinion heard, and the board processes. So the first hypothesis focusing on the effort norms, and that is related to the individual effort that each member put in their tasks, in their activities. So the first, based on this previous work, we believe the first hypothesis says that when the women reach the threshold of 20% of women on board, women are, raise their voice their opinion, and they speak up, basically, because they are not a token anymore. They can they speak up, and this may improve the board efforts that is expressed as the time devoted to their tasks. Because, in other words, the time, because in other words, when women reach such a threshold, they are not considered as token anymore, but they have the courage to speak up, and this is enough to change the board effort that is related to the time that the individual board members put in their activity. But the speak up is not, maybe not enough. So when the numerical representation of minority increased, also the board behavior changed. This is because the other board members considers women more equal colleagues, so they taking into consideration their opinion. So when the threshold of women increase, switching from 20% of women to 33% of women, well, in this case, not only the women are raise their voice, but also their voice is heard. And when their voice is heard, also the board members' attentiveness is improved even more. And also the cognitive conflicts, these task-related disagreement is even is improved, because the other board members consider the voice, taking into consideration the voice of the women. So we test such setting using 30 the FITSIMIB companies in Italy for a period until 2008-2015. This is a crucial period, and this gives us a quasi natural experiment, because in that years, especially in particular in 2012, a quota law was introduced in Italy, and the quota law identify two different thresholds. The first threshold was 20%, was a temporary threshold, was 20%, so boards has to comply with this law and has to increase the number of women on board and reach the 20%. But after the second board term, this percentage should be 33%. In that years. Now today it's even changed, but in that years this was the law. And we used to test this, we use a data stream databases that have quantity and quality data about the corporate governance activities and processes. This is our variable. We proxy the time devoted by board members to the board activity with two measures. The first is the average number of attendees of the individual board members. And the second proxy is the number of board meetings. So these two proxies measure the time that the board members devote to the board activity. The attentiveness and the participation is measured as a score that identify if the company has necessary internal improvements and information tools to develop effective board function and committee. The cognitive conflicts instead is a score that evaluate if the company has rules that maintain well-balanced board in terms of experience, knowledge, skills, and qualities. And then we have a set of control variable. This is our results. So we distinguish the voice, as we said, and being and having the voice heard. So the voice, the speak up situation is when women reach the threshold of 20%. And as we can see, when women reach this speak up situation, also the time devoted by directors to the board activities improve. So in terms the board attendance, the average board attendance improve by 2.77, and also the number of board meetings improve. The same positive effect is also for the attentiveness of the directors to the board activities and the cognitive conflicts, because as you can see, that it's these coefficients are positive and statistically significant. But what is interesting here is that what happens when the voice is also heard. So the value that the women put on the table is taken into account by the other board members. So in terms of board attendance and board meetings, this doesn't change so much. So this means that it's sufficient to have the 20% of women on the board to push the other board members to increase their time they devote to the board activity. But what is interesting is that the coefficient of the attentiveness of the director to the board activity is even more than double when we have 33% of women on the board. It means that to increase the attentiveness of the director to the board activities, it's not sufficient to have 20% of women, but we have to reach the 33%. So when we have the 33% of women, the board members' behavior change, and the effect is even more important. In the case of cognitive conflicts, we have a positive effect when we have 20% of women, when we have 32% of women. So this shows that to have a fruitful discussion among members and to create a task-related disagreement that can be good for the final board decision, the voice, so the speak-up situation, it's good enough. It's necessary to create a cognitive conflicts. So these are our conclusion. With our study, we try to move the discussion of women on boards further, because we are not just focusing on the number of women on boards, but we try to differentiate, to distinguish between two different situations, two different behavioral situations that women can have. The raising the voice, or what is called also the speak up situation, and having this voice heard. Different threshold of women bring different effect on the board outcome. So in other words, our conclusion say that certain board processes require different threshold and may require different dynamics of the board as a working group. So in other words, for the effort, for the time, for the activity that are related to the time, we need a specific threshold of women, but for other activity, for other board processes, having such threshold is not enough. We need to go beyond, and we need not just having speak up situation, but it's important that the other board member should listen what the women is saying. Our paper has also some implication for policymakers, because around the world there is a huge debate about quota law. A lot of countries have introduced quota law. Some countries are discussing right now, and other countries are thinking about which threshold we should have. And among countries, there is quite a variety in terms of requirement of thresholds that the regulators ask to have for women on board. So this paper could have some implication for policymakers, because can show that there is not a unique thresholds that it's, you know, the best threshold that fit for all, but different thresholds or different board processes that require different thresholds. So thank you for your attention, and I hope to see you virtually in during the discussion, during the panel session. Thank you.